Welcome to Case File, Chullin 29a-b, the investigation of the redundant Mishna. A single, foundational legal text. A seemingly unnecessary repetition. The Talmudic sages embark on a rigorous logical inquiry to uncover a hidden, fundamental distinction at the heart of Jewish law. This is the story of their investigation. In Jewish law, as in many legal systems, a principle of sufficiency is often applied. An action performed on the majority of an object is legally considered as if it were performed on the whole. The Mishnah teaches, the halakhic status of the majority of one siman is like that of the entire siman. The siman, plural simanim, refers to the windpipe, or terakeh, and the gullet, or veshet. These are the two tubes that must be cut in a valid shchita. The Mishnah, a text known for its extreme concision, appears to repeat this core principle. After establishing that the majority is like the whole, it then specifies. If one cut the majority of one siman in a bird or the majority of two simanim in an animal, his slaughter is valid. Why is this redundancy necessary? The Gemara senses a deeper meaning is being signaled. Here we have the analysis of Rav Hoshaya. The two statements are not redundant. One refers to unnecessary animals, Chullin, and the other refers to sacred offerings, Kadashim. Why state it for Chullin? The goal is to make the meat permissible to eat. The blood is not the primary concern. One might think that since blood is not needed, cutting even half a siman would suffice. Therefore, the Mishnah must state that a majority is required. Why state it for Kadashim? The goal is to harvest the blood for sprinkling on the altar. One might think that because the blood is so crucial, cutting a mere majority is insufficient. Perhaps the entire siman must be severed. Therefore, the Mishnah must state that a majority is sufficient. A series of sages, Amoraim, collaborate to resolve the redundancy. The Gemara provides a mnemonic to remember their contributions, Hekaf Shin Pe Shin Chet. Rav Hoshaya proposes the central hypothesis. Rav Kahana provides the first piece of evidence. Rav Shimi bar Ashi offers a second proof. Rav Pappa adds a third, distinct line of reasoning. Rav Ashi presents a fourth proof from a different angle. And Reish Lakish, represented by Chet in the mnemonic scheme, offers powerful, corroborating testimony. The theory of Rav Hoshaya is powerful, but it raises a new question. Which part of the Mishnah refers to Chullin and which to Kadashim? The sages now turn to the text for specific linguistic and legal clues. Clause 1, the Reish, the halakhic status of the majority of one siman is like that of the entire siman. Clause 2, the Seifa, if one cut the majority of one siman in a bird or the majority of two simanim in an animal, his slaughter is valid. The emerging consensus, the first clause, the Reish, refers to Chullin, and the latter clause, the Seifa, refers to Kadashim. The following evidence will support this conclusion. Our first witness is Rav Kahana. The first clause of the Mishnah uses the word shochet, one who slaughters. If the first clause were discussing sacred offerings, Kadashim, specifically birds, the Mishnah should have used the term amolek, one who pinches. Sacrificial birds are not slaughtered with a knife, but are killed by a priest pinching the neck with a fingernail, malika. The word choice shochet points directly to an unnecessary context, Chullin. The Gemara notes the latter clause also uses slaughter. But the reasoning of Rav Kahana holds because the first clause begins with a bird, where the shochet chelkei molek distinction is sharpest. The latter clause follows a mention of an animal, making the general term slaughter more natural. Our second witness is Rav Shimi bar Ashi. The first clause teaches one siman in a bird. This phrasing fits the unnecessary Chullin, context perfectly, where one siman is sufficient for a bird. However, if this were referring to sacred offerings, Kadashim, it would be imprecise. The bird burnt offering, or lata of, famously requires 2 Simanim to be cut. By specifying 1 Siman, the first clause clearly situates itself in the world of Chullin, avoiding the complexities of sacrificial requirements. The Gemara explains the latter clause's phrasing, majority of 1, is intentionally broad to encompass both the bird sin offering, which requires 1 Siman, and the bird burnt offering, which requires 2 Simanim. Our third witness is Rav Pappa. The Mishnah contains a dispute where Rabbi Yehuda says a slaughter is not valid until one cuts the neck veins, havoridin. The Rabbanan disagree. This dispute only makes sense in 29a-b, Chullin, context. In Chullin, the goal is simply to make the meat kosher, so the Rabbanan can argue that cutting the veins is not essential. But if the Mishnah were discussing sacred offerings, Kadashim, the Rabbanan would have no reason to disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. In the sacred context, the one slaughtering requires the maximum amount of blood for the altar. Cutting the veins would be an obvious requirement. The existence of this dispute strongly implies the context is Chullin. Our fourth witness is Rav Ashi. A later Mishnah states, one who slaughters, hashochet, 2 animals' heads simultaneously, his slaughter is valid. The use of slaughters implies this is valid only after the fact, diavad, but not permissible initially, lachatchila. Why would this be prohibited initially? Rav Yosef teaches from a verse in Vayikra 16:5, you shall sacrifice it, tizbachu, that one person may not slaughter 2 offerings simultaneously. This prohibition is specific to sacred offerings, kadashim. In a non-necessary context, Chullin, there would be no reason to forbid slaughtering 2 animals at once, even initially. Therefore, the Mishnah's implication of an initial prohibition proves its context is kadashim. This places the latter clause in the sacred realm, leaving the first for the profane. Reish Lakish confirms the Chullin Chelkei Kadashim distinction by analyzing a Mishnah about the high priest service on Yom Kippur. The Mishnah in Yoma 31b describes the high priest slaughtering the daily offering, and another priest completing the slaughter on his behalf. The question arises, why is this completion necessary if cutting the majority is already legally sufficient? One might think the slaughter is invalid without it. Reish Lakish explains, the second clause of our Mishnah, majority of 1, is valid, was written specifically to teach us that the slaughter is indeed valid even before the second priest acts. So why complete the slaughter at all? There is a mitzvah, a meritorious act, to complete the slaughter initially to facilitate the free flow of blood for the altar. This detail is unique to the sacred context of Kadashim. Let us review the convergence of proofs supporting the hypothesis. The Mishnah's redundancy distinguishes between 29a-b, Chullin, and sacred Kadashim. From Rav Kahana, use of shochet instead of molek points to Chullin. From Rav Shimi, reference to 1 Siman fits the general rule for Chullin, not the specific requirements for all Kadashim. From Rav Pappa, the debate about cutting veins only makes sense in a Chullin context where maximum blood flow is not the primary objective. From Rav Ashi, the prohibition against slaughtering 2 animals initially is unique to Kadashim. From Reish Lakish, the concept of a mitzvah to complete an irretrievably slaughter for better blood flow is exclusive to Kadashim. The investigation is conclusive. The sages demonstrate that the repetition of the Mishnah is a deliberate and precise tool. It teaches 2 distinct laws for 2 fundamental domains of life. The majority is like the whole, clause achat. This is the rule for Chullin, and 29a-b. It establishes that a majority is required, less is not enough. If one cut the majority, clause 2, this is the rule for Kadashim, sacred. It establishes that a majority is sufficient, more is not required for legal validity. Key insight, in a sacred text, there is no superfluous language. Apparent redundancy is a signal to search for a deeper distinction. The resolution of the redundant Mishnah of Chullin is more than a lesson in the laws of slaughter. It is a masterclass in a unique mode of intellectual inquiry. First, the principle of precision. Every word in a foundational text matters. Redundancy is not a flaw but a feature, pointing toward nuanced distinctions. Second, the sacred Chelkei Profane axis. The distinction between Chullin and Kadashim is not merely technical, but a fundamental organizing principle of reality, requiring Iz's own precise legal applications. Third, dialectic as discovery. The truth is not stated. It is uncovered through rigorous questioning, proposal of theories, and the meticulous gathering of textual evidence. The collaborative, emultative process of the Talmud is Iz's core strength, a timeless model for arriving at a deeper understanding.